You see this clause. It renders the exclusivity agreement completely invalid due to the untimely fulfillment of the environmental impact requirements.
The city skyline was a testament to the power of one man, Marcus Thorne. He didn't just own buildings, he owned the law. When he targeted the historic Warwick block for his new Olympus Tower, every lawyer in the city tucked their tail and ran. The contracts were ironclad, the buyouts non-negotiable. The case was closed before it even opened. But they all missed one thing. They missed the waitress who poured their coffee every morning. They didn't know that Clara Hayes, balancing hot plates and endless refills, was about to read the one line of fine print that could burn their entire empire to the ground. The air in the Bluebell diner was thick with the smell of stale coffee and fried onions, a comforting aroma that was about to be extinguished. Clara Hayes navigated the narrow aisles with an expertise born of 5 years of practice, a full pot of coffee in one hand and 3 heavy plates balanced on her other arm. "Order up, table 4, she called, sliding the plates down without a clatter. "Extra bacon just like I ordered," grunted a man in a pinstripe suit, not even looking up from his Wall Street Journal. "2 strips, crispy, side of rye toast, dry." "Just like always, Mr. Henderson," Clara replied, her voice pleasant, neutral. The men at table 4 were regulars. They were lawyers from Garrison, Steele and Locke, the most powerful law firm in the state, perhaps the country. Their offices were 2 blocks away in a tower of reflective glass that blotted out the morning sun. They were, in Clara's mind, the Shark Tank. And for the past 2 months, they had been feeding. Their primary client, their only client that seemed to matter, was Marcus Thorne. Marcus Thorne was a force of nature, a billionaire who had reshaped the city's skyline in his own image. He wasn't just new money. He was glorious, terrifying money. He bought politicians, gutted rivals, and built monuments to himself. His current project was his masterpiece, the Olympus Tower, a gleaming, mile-high spike of glass and steel that would be the tallest building on the continent. There was just one problem: the Warwick block. The block was a slice of old-world charm: brownstones, small businesses, the Bluebell diner, and the apartment building where Clara's grandmother, Eleanor, had lived for 40 years. It was the last piece of the puzzle, and Thorne wanted it. "He's not going to budge," said Jessica Sloane, the sharpest of the sharks, stirring her black coffee. She was Thorne's lead counsel, a woman who wore her ambition like armor. "The old man in 3B is holding out, thinks his dusty apartment is a historical landmark." "It doesn't matter," Henderson scoffed, biting into his bacon. "Thorne is authorized. The city council folded yesterday. Eminent domain is a lock if we need it, but the buyout offer is so generous, the judge will laugh him out of court." "It's not generous," muttered another lawyer, a younger associate named Ben. "It's just enough to displace them permanently. They can't afford to live within 50 miles of here on that payout." Jessica Sloane shot him a look that could freeze fire. "Your compassion is noted, Ben. It's also irrelevant. This is business. The contracts are ironclad. Thorne Industries dotted every I and crossed every T. This deal is done." Clara refilled their cups, her hand steady, her expression serene. She was invisible to them, a pair of hands that brought food, a muted voice that asked, "More coffee?" But Clara was listening. She always listened. That evening, she walked the 2 blocks to her grandmother's apartment. The Warwick Arms was old, the lobby smelled of polish and old roses. But it was home. She found Eleanor at the kitchen table, a sheaf of thick, glossy papers spread out before her. "They delivered it by courier," Eleanor said, her voice trembling slightly. She was a tough woman, but this was different. "It's the final offer, Clara," 100 pages of threats, it feels like. It's just a contract, Grandma, Clara said, sitting down, untying the apron from her waist. The lawyers from the Tenants' Association met this afternoon, Eleanor said, pushing the document toward her. They said it's useless. They said Thorne has us. They said we have 30 days to sign, or he'll take the building for pennies on the dollar. Clara looked at the cover letter. It bore the insignia of Garrison, Steel and Lock. The Sharks, she whispered. What, dear? Nothing. Clara pulled the document closer. They're just bullies in expensive suits. They rely on people being too scared to read. What did the other tenants say? They're signing, Eleanor sighed, rubbing her temples. Most of them. They're terrified. They just want to take the money and go. But Clara, where will we go? Clara looked at her grandmother, the woman who had raised her. She looked at the walls, covered in framed photos of a life lived well, if simply. This wasn't just an apartment. It was a foundation. Let me read it, Clara said, her voice suddenly hard. Honey, the association lawyers are probably getting a kickback from GSL, Clara said, her cynicism sharp, or they're just scared. I'm not. I read the fine print on the new ketchup supplier's contract last month and found out they were charging us a 15% delivery surcharge that wasn't in the verbal agreement. Mr. Henderson at Table 4 might think I'm just a pair of hands, but I know how to read. Clara had a secret. It wasn't a superpower. Not really. It was just a mind that held things. She remembered every order, every modification, every customer's name, and every line of text she read. It wasn't eidetic, but it was close. Text, especially legal text, settled in her mind like sediment, forming clear, distinct layers. She took the 100-page document, a fresh pot of tea, and sat at the small kitchen table. Go to bed, Grandma. I'll handle this. Eleanor hesitated, then nodded, touching Clara's shoulder. Don't stay up too late, child. Clara didn't hear her. She was already on page 1. Agreement of purchase and sale between Apex Urban Development LLC, a subsidiary of Thorne Industries, and the legal tenant of record. She read. She read about zoning waivers, liability indemnifications, and payout schedules. She read the endless, mind-numbing boilerplate. Hours passed. The city lights dimmed. The building grew silent. She read until 4 a.m., and just as the first hint of grey dawn touched the window, she found it. It was on page 88, in Appendix D, Section 4, subsection LRC. A single, seemingly innocuous line, buried in a list of historical land registry file numbers. Property title subject to all covenants of record, including Deed 14B 88, City Archive, 1892. It was nothing. It was just a standard CYA, cover your ass, line. A lawyer's boilerplate to protect against ancient claims. But Clara frowned. 14B 88, 1892. She looked at the other file numbers. They were all from the 1950s or 60s, when the building was last sold. This one was an outlier, an antique. Why was it there? She was exhausted. Her shift started in 3 hours, but she couldn't shake the feeling. The Sharks at GSL were meticulous. They didn't leave loose threads. So why reference a deed from the 19th century? Clara folded the corner of the page, a knot of unease, and, for the first time, a tiny spark of dangerous curiosity tightening in her stomach. The next day, Clara moved through the diner in a haze of exhaustion. "Hayes! Table 6 needs a check," barked her manager. "On it," Clara replied, her mind miles away, parsing the legal jargon she'd absorbed. The lawyers from Garrison, Steel and Lock were back in their booth, laughing loudly. Jessica Sloane was holding court, her voice cutting through the diner's bustle. "The holdouts will fold by Friday," she announced, sipping her espresso. Thorne is moving up the demolition schedule. He wants a hole in the ground by the 1st of the month." "What about the old lady in 3B?" asked Ben, the young associate, who looked pale. "She'll sign," Sloane said, with a dismissive wave. "Her granddaughter's a waitress here, isn't she? Cute. She'll get her little nest egg and they can move to, I don't know, New Jersey. Everyone has a price, Ben. Remember that." Clara's hand tightened on the coffee pot. Waitress. The word felt like a slap. She wanted to pour the scalding coffee right into Sloane's lap. Instead, she just smiled. "More coffee, Mrs. Sloane?" Sloane held up her cup without looking at her. "Just fill it." Clara spent her 30-minute break at the public library, using their archaic computer system to access the city archive database. She typed in Deed 14B 88, 1892. The computer churned. File found. Physical copy located. Municipal archive. Sub-basement 4. Request required. "I need to go to the municipal archive," she told her manager, Sal, after her shift. "What for?" "You in trouble?" Sal asked, wiping down the counter. "My grandmother's building. I just need to check a public record." "Clara, don't," Sal said, his voice low. "You can't fight Marcus Thorne. He's not a man. He's a corporation. You'll get squashed." "I'm just looking," Clara said. The municipal archive was a mausoleum of forgotten paper. A bored clerk pointed her to a dusty elevator. Sub-basement 4 smelled of mildew and time. It took another hour for a different clerk to retrieve a massive, leather-bound ledger. "Deed 14B 88, the clerk wheezed, blowing a cloud of dust off the cover. "Warwick Block, here you go." Clara opened it. The paper was thick, the ink a faded sepia, written in elegant, looping cursive. It was a deed of gift, donating the land from the estate of a wealthy philanthropist to the city. The name on the deed made Clara's breath catch. The Astor family. She read the terms. It was mostly standard until she got to the covenants. And there it was. This parcel is granted to the City of New York on the express and perpetual condition that no less than 10% of the aforementioned parcel's square footage shall be maintained, in perpetuity, as a public garden, accessible to all citizens, for the restful contemplation of nature. Clara's heart was hammering. She reread the line. Perpetual condition. Public garden. In perpetuity. She pulled out her phone and brought up the architectural renderings of the Olympus Tower. She'd seen them plastered all over the news. It was a fortress of commerce, a sheer wall of glass, a massive marble plaza, a private 3-story lobby for Thorne's penthouse. There was no garden. Not a public one. Not a blade of grass. They missed it, she thought, her mind reeling. Or they thought no one would look. She felt a rush of adrenaline, a sense of dizzying power. This was it. This was the flaw in the ironclad contract. She immediately took her findings to the Tenants Association lawyer. He was a small, nervous man named Peter Hale. He looked at the high-resolution photos Clara had taken of the deed. He paled. "This is problematic," he whispered, wiping his glasses. "Problematic? It's a bomb," Clara said, leaning forward. "He's in breach of the original deed covenant. His entire development plan is illegal." "Ms. Hayes," Hale said, closing the file and pushing it back toward her. "This is an 1892 deed. These things are antiquated. A judge would likely rule that the character of the neighborhood has changed, rendering the covenant obsolete. It's a legal speed bump, not a wall." "But it's in his own contract," Clara insisted. "Page 88, they referenced it. They know it exists." "That's just due diligence to cover them." "Clara," he said, using her first name with a weary familiarity. "Garrison, Steel and Lock has 50 lawyers on this project. You have a 130-year-old piece of paper. They will argue it away in 10 minutes. They will file a motion to quiet title, and it will be granted. I cannot, in good conscience, pursue this. It will only antagonize Mr. Thorne. So you're just going to roll over. I am going to advise my clients, your grandmother included, to take the generous offer on the table. I'm sorry. Clara left his office, her fury a cold stone in her stomach. He wasn't scared. He was beaten. They were all beaten. She spent the next 2 days trying. She called every major law firm in the city. The moment she mentioned Marcus Thorne and Warwick Block, the conversation was over. We have a conflict of interest. We are not taking on new litigation at this time. You are advised to accept the settlement. No lawyer dared challenge the billionaire. She was back at the diner, exhausted and defeated, pouring coffee for the sharks. They were celebrating. Looks like the last holdout in 3B is caving, Henderson said, grinning. Hale called our office this morning. They're signing. Good, Sloane said. I'm tired of this case. Ben, file the Apex Urban final transfer. Let's get this land officially moved to the parent company. Clara felt sick. Her grandmother was giving up. That night, she was staring at the deed photos on her phone, tears of frustration in her eyes, when her manager, Sal, quietly sat down across from her at the empty counter. You're still on this, huh? He said. They're all cowards, Clara whispered. Sal polished a glass, his expression thoughtful. You're not looking for a good lawyer, kid. Good lawyers are expensive, and they want to stay good. They don't pick fights they can't win. The Sharks at GSL, they haven't lost a major case in a decade. So what do I do? You don't find a lawyer who hasn't lost. You find the one lawyer they're afraid of, the one who almost beat them. Clara looked up. Who? There was a guy, years ago, gave GSL a run for their money on the Hudson Yards deal. Almost got an injunction. They buried him, of course. Leaked a story about a drinking problem, got him censured by the bar. He's not at a big firm anymore. I don't even know if he still practices. What's his name? Clara asked, her voice desperate. Sal looked around the empty diner. Finlay, Arthur Finlay. Last I heard, he had a tiny office over a laundromat in Hell's Kitchen. Don't tell him I sent you. Arthur Finlay's office was exactly as advertised. It was a small, dusty room above the spin-and-dry laundromat, the rhythmic thud of industrial dryers vibrating through the floorboards. The name on the frosted glass door simply read, A. Finlay, Legal Services. Clara knocked. A muffled, "It's open," came from within. The room smelled of old paper, whiskey, and defeat. Books were piled in teetering stacks. File boxes lined every wall. And behind a massive, cluttered desk sat Arthur Finlay. He looked like a man who had been unfolded from a laundry bag. His suit was rumpled, his hair a white, chaotic mess. And his eyes, behind thick glasses, were weary and bloodshot. If you're here about a slip and fall, I'm not interested, he slurred, gesturing to a rickety chair. If you're here about a will, I'll need cash up front. I'm here about Marcus Thorne, Clara said. Arthur Finlay froze. He slowly looked up, his eyes focusing on her for the first time. He seemed to sober up instantly, the fog in his eyes clearing, replaced by a sharp, cold intelligence. Get out, he said. Please just hear me out, Clara said, stepping forward. My name is Clara Hayes. My grandmother is being forced out of her apartment. Thorne's lawyers at Garrison, Steel and Locke are bulldozing the entire block. GSL. Arthur spat the name like it was poison. And Thorne, the unholy alliance. Kid, you're in the wrong place. I'm a ghost. I don't pick fights anymore, especially not with them. I work at the Bluebell Diner, Clara pressed, ignoring him. I serve them coffee. Jessica Sloane, Mr. Henderson, I hear them talk, and I read the contract they gave my grandmother." "And?" Finlay said, leaning back, intrigued despite himself. "You found a typo in the force majeure clause? Good luck." "I found a reference," Clara said, pulling the papers from her bag. "Deed 14B-88 from 1892, the Astor Covenant. It mandates a 10% public park in perpetuity." She laid the photo of the sepia-toned deed on his desk. Arthur Finlay stared at it. He was silent for a full minute. The only sound was the thud, thud, thud from downstairs. He reached into a drawer, pulled out a magnifying glass, and leaned over the text. "In perpetuity," he whispered. He looked at Clara, then back at the deed. "And Thorne's plan, the Olympus Tower." "Zero public access," Clara said. "A private marble plaza for his corporate tenants." Finlay began to laugh. It was a dry, rusty sound. They missed it. The Sharks. Sloane. They got so arrogant. They missed it. They referenced a killer covenant in their own appendix. "The tenant's lawyer said it's antiquated," Clara said. "He said a judge will throw it out." "Your lawyer is an idiot," Finlay snapped, standing up. He began to pace the small room, his energy completely transformed. He was no longer a broken-down old man. He was a hunter who had just caught a fresh scent. "He's right. They will argue changed character of the neighborhood. They will try to quiet the title. But the Astor family. This isn't just some forgotten farmer's deed. This is Astor money. The New York Public Library was built on Astor money. The courts respect Astor covenants, and in perpetuity is the strongest language in contract law. It means forever." He jabbed a finger at Clara. "This isn't a speed bump. This is a mountain. They can't build, not without that park." "So, you'll take the case?" Clara asked, barely breathing. Arthur stopped pacing. He looked at the bottle of whiskey on his credenza, then back at Clara. "GSL and Thorne, they didn't just beat me," he said, his voice low. "They ruined me. They leaked a story about a sealed settlement from my divorce, claimed I was an alcoholic, which, to be fair, wasn't entirely a lie, and got me suspended for 6 months. I lost my partners, my reputation, my house. I've been drafting wills for old ladies ever since." He looked at the deed on his desk. "They thought I was dead. They probably don't even remember my name." He walked to his coat rack and pulled off a dusty, wrinkled blazer. "Ms. Hayes?" he said, straightening his tie. "I'll take the case. They want a hole in the ground? Let's give them one." The next 48 hours were a blur. Arthur Finlay was a man possessed. He filed a motion for a temporary restraining order and a preliminary injunction, citing breach of a perpetual land covenant. The motion was assigned to Judge Catherine Wallace, a no-nonsense jurist known for her strict interpretation of property law. The courtroom was packed. Marcus Thorne wasn't there. He never appeared for minor legal matters. But Jessica Sloane was, flanked by a dozen GSL associates. She looked bored, annoyed. "Your Honor," Sloane began, "this is a frivolous, last-minute filing. Mr. Finlay is a non-entity, attempting to extort a settlement by digging up an irrelevant 130-year-old covenant that has no bearing on modern zoning. An irrelevant covenant that your own firm referenced in Appendix D of your purchase agreement." Arthur Finlay's voice was clear and strong, echoing in the chamber. Jessica Sloane's practiced smile faltered. She hadn't expected him to know that. "Standard boilerplate, Your Honor," she recovered quickly. "It does not reaffirm the covenant, it merely acknowledges its historical existence." "Its perpetual existence," Arthur countered. "Your Honor, the Astor family, in donating this land, was explicit. In perpetuity." That word has not changed its meaning since 1892. Mr. Thorne's plans, which we have submitted as Exhibit B, contain a private plaza, a private lobby, and zero public access, in direct violation of the deed. He cannot build. His title to the land is not clear. Sloane fought back, arguing changed circumstances and public good, claiming $1 billion tower was of more benefit than a small, antiquated park. But Judge Wallace was frowning. Miss Sloane, I am not here to debate the merits of Mr. Thorne's architecture. I am here to interpret the law, and the law on perpetual covenants is notoriously rigid. The fact that your own firm cited the deed gives me pause. You were aware of it. We were aware of a historical artifact, Your Honor, not a binding restriction. Then you should not have cited it, Judge Wallace said coolly. A belt and suspenders approach seems to have trapped you, Counselor. She banged her gavel. I am granting the temporary restraining order. All work on the Warwick block is to cease immediately. We will convene in 1 week to hear arguments for the preliminary injunction. Until then, Mr. Thorne's company is not to set foot on that property, nor contact any of the tenants. The courtroom erupted. Jessica Sloane was white-hot with rage, her knuckles white as she gripped the lectern. Clara, sitting in the back row, felt a surge of triumph so powerful it made her dizzy. Arthur Finlay walked back to her, a small, grim smile on his face. That, he said, was round 1. We won, Clara whispered. We won time, Arthur corrected, packing his worn briefcase. We poked the bear, Miss Hayes. Now the bear is going to wake up, and it is going to be very, very angry. Marcus Thorne was, as Arthur predicted, very angry. He did not call Jessica Sloane. He summoned her. His penthouse office was a sterile expanse of white marble and glass, overlooking the city he considered his. Thorne himself was a tall, imposing man, with the cold, still eyes of a predator. Explain, he said, his voice a low rumble. He didn't look at her, but at the Warwick block, visible miles below. It's an anomaly, sir, Sloane said, her voice tight. A ghost clause from an 1892 deed, and a disgraced lawyer looking for a payday. It's a shakedown. I don't get shaken down, Jessica, Thorne said, turning, and I don't tolerate anomalies. I gave your firm a blank check to make this seamless. It is not seamless. We will crush it, sir. We'll file a motion to quiet title. We'll argue obsolescence. It will take a week, maybe 2. I don't have 2 weeks, Thorne said. My investors, my timelines, they are precise. This ghost is costing me $10 million a day in standing costs. This is not a legal problem anymore, Jessica. It's a pest problem. I want it gone. I don't care about the law. I care about my hole in the ground. Sir, the injunction, Thorne interrupted, was granted based on the claims of a waitress. And a drunk. This is not a real case. This is an insult. Find their pressure points. Squeeze. I want them broken. I want that injunction dropped by Friday. Do you understand me? Yes, Mr. Thorne, Sloane said, the blood draining from her face. The retaliation was not swift. It was brutal and precise. The very next day, Clara arrived at the Bluebell Diner for her shift. Sal, her manager, was waiting for her, his face ashen. Clara, he stammered, holding an envelope. I'm sorry. What is it? Clara asked, her stomach clenching. The building. Our lease. Thorne Industries is the new landlord for this building, too. They bought it last night. They terminated our lease. Health code violations. We're closed, effective immediately. What? Clara was stunned. But we're spotless. It doesn't matter. They sent an inspector at 5 a.m. They found imminent hazards. It's bogus, but it's legal. I'm out, Clara. We all are. I'm so sorry. Clara stood on the sidewalk, the keys to the diner suddenly useless in her hand. Her job was gone. She ran to her grandmother's building. She found Eleanor in the lobby, weeping, surrounded by other tenants. A new notice was pinned to the lobby door. It wasn't a buyout. It was an eviction. They're saying the building is structurally unsound, an old man sputtered. It's a lie. This building is brick and steel. The notice cited an emergency order from the Department of Buildings, declaring the Warwick Arms unsafe for human habitation. All tenants were to vacate within 72 hours. It was signed by a city commissioner who, Clara knew from the papers, was one of Thorne's pocket politicians. He's not buying us out anymore, Eleanor whispered, clutching Clara's arm. He's just taking it. But Thorne wasn't done. The final blow was aimed at Arthur. When Clara burst into his office, he was staring at the front page of the New York Post. The headline screamed, "Disgraced Drunk Lawyer v. Thorne." The article was a masterpiece of character assassination. It rehashed every detail of Arthur's old censure, embellished with anonymous quotes about his erratic behavior and history of alcoholism. It painted him as a predatory shyster, taking advantage of old people, led by Clara, whom the article described as a disgruntled ex-employee. The diner story had already broken, with a history of instability. "They're painting us as a circus," Arthur said, his voice hollow. He tossed the paper onto his desk. "They shut the diner," Clara said, her voice breaking. "They're evicting my grandmother. In 72 hours. Arthur, the injunction. It doesn't matter if there are no tenants left to protect. He's just taking it. We lost." Arthur Finlay looked around his dusty office. He looked at the whiskey bottle. He sat down heavily, the fight gone from his eyes. "He won," Arthur whispered. "He found the weak points. Us. We aren't corporations. We're just people. And he knows how to break people." "So that's it?" Clara yelled, tears streaming down her face. "You're just going to give up? You're going to let him win?" "He has won, child," Arthur roared, slamming his fist on the desk. "The injunction is for the land. It stops him from building. It does not stop him from using the city to condemn a building he already owns. It's a different legal track. He bypassed us. He'll have that building empty by the weekend. The injunction will be moot because the plaintiffs will be gone." Clara sank into the chair, the full weight of their defeat crashing down on her. She had been so stupid. She thought a piece of paper could stop a tank, but Marcus Thorne wasn't a man. He was a force. He didn't follow the rules. He made them. It was over. They had nowhere to go. No job, no home, no lawyer. She walked out of Arthur's office, not even bothering to say goodbye. She walked for hours, ending up back at the Bluebell Diner. The windows were already boarded up. "Closed by order of Debtors of Health" was plastered on the door. She sat on the curb opposite, watching the sunset reflect off the arrogant, silent glass of the distant Thorne Tower. She thought about Jessica Sloane. Everyone has a price. Sloane had been wrong. Clara didn't have a price. She had a cost, and the cost was everything. She was defeated. She was just a waitress after all. And as she sat there, a black town car pulled up. The window rolled down. Jessica Sloane looked out, her expression unreadable. "Get in, Clara," she said. It wasn't a request. Clara stared. "I'm not going anywhere with you." "Don't be stupid," Sloane said, her voice tired. "I'm not here to gloat. Get in the car." Hesitantly, Clara got in. The leather was impossibly soft. The air was silent and cool. "Where are we going?" "Nowhere. We're just talking." Sloane instructed her driver to pull around the corner, away from the boarded-up diner. She turned in her seat. You're good, Sloane said. The Astor Covenant. No one's looked at that file in 50 years. You and that old drunk actually made us sweat. That's rare. You destroyed our lives, Clara said, her voice dead. You closed my job. You're making my grandmother homeless. That wasn't me, Sloane said, a flash of something in her eyes. That was him. That's his pest control. I do the legal work. He does that. I'm a lawyer, Clara. I like rules. I like contracts. I don't like this. Why are you telling me this? Offering me a job? Clara sneered. Sloane almost smiled. No, I'm here to offer you the original deal, the buyout. Mr. Thorne is impressed by your persistence. He is willing to be generous. He'll pay your grandmother triple the original offer. He'll pay you a substantial consulting fee, enough to buy a nice condo in Florida. He'll even get Sal his diner back in a new location. And Arthur? Finley gets nothing. The injunction is dropped. The eviction stands. But your grandmother leaves rich. Everyone else, well, they had their chance to sign. So I sell out my neighbors and my lawyer, and my grandma and I get rich, Clara said. That's the deal, Sloane confirmed. It's the best one you'll ever get. You have until tomorrow morning, when the eviction notices become final. Clara looked at the woman who had, hours earlier, been her mortal enemy. Sloane looked exhausted. Why? Clara asked. Why are you offering this? You already won. You're evicting us. Sloane looked out the window. Because this case is messy. That injunction. Judge Wallace is pissed. The Post article made Finley a sympathetic figure. The eviction is bad optics. It's ugly. Thorne doesn't care, but I do. My reputation is built on clean, ironclad wins. Not this brute force. I want this file closed. Take the money, Clara. You've earned it. You lost, but you made us pay for the win. The offer hung in the air. Triple the money. Safety. A future. All she had to do was give up. Thank you for the offer, Ms. Sloane, Clara said, her voice shaking, but a new cold resolve forming. But I'm not for sale, and I don't think we've lost yet. Sloane's face hardened. You're a fool. You're choosing to be homeless for principles? You'll be on the street tomorrow. Let us out, driver, Clara said. The car stopped. Clara got out. Tomorrow morning, Clara, Sloane called after her. The offer expires. You'll have nothing. Clara didn't look back. She ran. She ran all the way back to Hell's Kitchen, to the office above the laundromat. She burst in. Arthur was still at his desk, the whiskey bottle open, but the glass was empty. He was staring at the Post article. He offered me a deal, Clara said, breathless. Who? Sloane. She's in a car outside my diner. Triple the money for my grandmother. A consulting fee for me. We drop the injunction. Take it, Arthur said, not looking up. Take it and run. I'm done. They beat me again. No! Clara slammed her hands on his desk, scattering papers. Don't you see? They're scared. Why offer a deal if they've already won? Sloane is offering money to make the injunction go away. That means the injunction matters. The Astor Covenant is real, and she knows it. Arthur looked up, a flicker of light in his dead eyes. She offered you money? Yes. She said the case is messy and bad optics. She's a lawyer. She doesn't care about optics. She cares about losing. She's worried Judge Wallace will make the injunction permanent. But the eviction, Clara, it doesn't matter if we win the injunction. You'll be homeless. So we fight the eviction, Clara said. How? It's a city order. The building is unsafe. Clara started pacing, her mind racing, processing every word she'd heard, every line she'd read. Thorne bought the diner building. He bought my grandma's building. He's moving fast. Too fast. He's sloppy." "He's not sloppy," Arthur said. "He's thorough." "No," Clara insisted. "He's arrogant. He's moving millions of dollars around to buy buildings, to buy inspectors." She thought back to the diner, to the sharks. What had Sloane said? "Ben, file the Apex Urban final transfer. Let's get this land officially moved to the parent company." The memory hit her like a physical blow. "Arthur," she said, her voice low and urgent. "What was the name of the company on the buyout offer?" Arthur shuffled through the papers. "Apex. Apex Urban Development, LLC. It's Thorne's shell company for this project." "Are you sure?" Clara pressed. "Apex. Urban. Yes, URBAN. Why?" Clara's blood ran cold. She grabbed her phone, her fingers flying across the screen. She went back to the diner, to the last day. The sharks. Sloane's voice. She was serving them, just before Sal told her she was fired. No, it wasn't then. It was before that, the day after the injunction. She'd been refilling their coffee. Sloane was on her phone, annoyed. Sloane, on phone. "Yes, Mr. Thorne, I'm heading to the archives now. No, I'll handle the Apex Ubran. Filing myself. The associates are idiots." Clara had heard it. She'd processed it. Ubran. Not Urban. "Arthur," she said, her voice trembling. "Go to the state's corporate registry. Now. What am I looking for?" "Search for Apex Urban Development, LLC." Arthur typed on his ancient computer. "Got it. Filed 6 months ago. Standard LLC. Thorne is the sole proprietor." "Now," Clara said, leaning over the desk. "Search. APEX, UBRAN, Apex, Ubran." Arthur typed it in. He hit Enter. He froze. On the screen, a new file loaded. Apex Ubran Development, LLC. It's a different company," Arthur whispered. "Filed 3 days ago. The day after our injunction." "What does it mean?" Clara asked. Arthur was reading, his eyes wide. "He's transferring the assets. After we filed the injunction against Apex Urban, he created a new, nearly identical shell company, Apex Ubran. And he's trying to transfer the Warwick Block deed to it. He's trying to sidestep the injunction by changing the defendant's name by 1 letter. Is that legal? It's called fraudulent conveyance," Arthur shouted, jumping to his feet. "He's trying to make the injunction moot. He's moving the target. Sloane must be at the city archive right now, trying to file the new deed transfer." "But wait," Clara said, her mind catching on another thread. "The eviction notices, the diner, who issued them?" Arthur clicked through the links on the Apex Ubran page. He pulled up the new public filings. His face went white. "Clara," he said, turning to her slowly. "The company that bought the diner building, the company that filed the eviction notice on the Warwick Arms. It wasn't Thorne Industries. It wasn't Apex Urban." He pointed to the screen. It was Apex Ubran Development, LLC. Clara didn't understand. "So? Don't you see?" Arthur's voice was shaking with a terrible, joyous realization. "This new company, Apex Ubran, it doesn't own the land. The deed transfer isn't final yet. Sloane is trying to file it right now. The land, the building, it's still legally owned by Apex Urban, the company under the injunction." He grabbed his jacket. "The company that just evicted your grandmother has no legal standing to do so. The eviction notice is fraudulent. It's void." This was the fine print, not the 1892 deed. This, a single, misspelled letter, born of arrogance and haste. "He tried to be too clever," Arthur said, a wild grin spreading across his face. "He tried to play chess, but he just knocked over the whole board." "We have to move fast," Arthur said, his mind working faster than Clara had ever seen. "Sloane is at the Hall of Records trying to finalize the fraudulent transfer. If she succeeds, Apex Ubran will be the new owner, and we'll be back to square one. We have to stop the transfer, and we have to get back in front of Judge Wallace." "She's not on the bench today," Clara said. "The injunction hearing isn't for a week." "Judges have chambers, and they really don't like being defrauded," Arthur said, grabbing his briefcase. He was already dialing his phone. "Pete? Yeah, it's Finley. Arthur Finley. I need a favor. I need an emergency TRO hearing with Judge Wallace. Now, yes, I know who I'm dealing with. Just get me in the room." He hung up. "My old clerk. He owes me. He'll try. Let's go." They raced to the courthouse, a frantic taxi ride through gridlocked traffic. Clara's heart felt like it was trying to escape her chest. When they arrived, Jessica Sloane was standing in the atrium, a satisfied smirk on her face. She was holding a newly stamped document. "Mr. Finley," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "Clara, I'm surprised to see you here, and you missed your deadline. The offer is withdrawn." "You filed the transfer," Arthur said, his face grim. "As of 10 minutes ago, Apex Ubran Development is the legal owner of the Warwick block," Sloane announced. "Your injunction against Apex Urban is now, as I believe I predicted, entirely moot. You've been chasing a ghost." "You," Clara started, her voice raw. "You misspelled the name on purpose." "A clerical error," Sloane said, tapping the document. "Easily fixed. But for now, a new legal entity owns the land. An entity that is not subject to your little injunction. The eviction stands. Demolition begins Monday." "You lost. Again." "You seem to be forgetting something, Ms. Sloane," Arthur said, his voice quiet. "Am I?" "The eviction notices. They were served yesterday. By Apex Ubran." Sloane's smirk faltered, just for a fraction of a second. "Correct. The new owner." "But Apex Ubran wasn't the new owner yesterday," Arthur pressed. "It wasn't the owner until 10 minutes ago, which means, Councillor, you served 80 tenants with fraudulent eviction notices, claiming authority you did not possess." The colour drained from Jessica Sloane's face. "You committed fraud," Clara whispered, the pieces clicking into place. "Massive, prosecutable fraud, on behalf of your client." "That's a procedural error," Sloane stammered, recovering. "A judge will—" "A judge?" A voice boomed from across the hall. "Councillors, my chambers." Now. Judge Wallace was standing at the entrance to the courtroom, her face a mask of thunder. Arthur's clerk must have gotten through. The walk to her chambers was the longest of Clara's life. Sloane, for the first time, looked terrified. "I called the Hall of Records," Judge Wallace said, throwing a file on her desk as they entered. "I put a judicial hold on all transfers related to case 1138B. Your transfer, Ms. Sloane, was reversed, pending this hearing. You filed it after my clerk informed your office I was reviewing the matter. You are bordering on contempt." Sloane was silent. "Mr. Finley," the judge said. "Explain. And this had better be good." "Your Honour," Arthur said, stepping forward. "It's simple. Yesterday the defendant, Apex Urban, which is under your valid TRO, created a new shell, Apex Ubran. They did this for the sole purpose of circumventing your order. That is a very serious allegation," Judge Wallace said. "It's an allegation they have just proven," Arthur said. "Ms. Sloane just admitted to filing the deed transfer herself. But more importantly, Your Honour, yesterday, this new entity, Apex Ubran, which had zero legal claim to the property, filed emergency eviction notices against all tenants of the Warwick Arms, citing fraudulent structural claims." He placed one of the eviction notices on the desk. "This is a criminal act. They used a shell company with no assets and no title to fraudulently evict 80 people, including my co-counsel's grandmother, all to bypass your injunction." Judge Wallace read the eviction notice. She looked at the filing date. She looked at the name Apex Ubran. Then she looked at Jessica Sloane. "Ms. Sloane," the judge said, her voice lethally quiet. "Did you file this eviction?" My team filed it, Your Honor, on behalf of our client." "Your client, who had no legal right to that property until, as you thought, 10 minutes ago?" It was a preemptive filing, Your Honor, pending the transfer." "A preemptive fraud?" Judge Wallace exploded, standing up. "You tried to use a typo to render a superior court injunction worthless, and in the process, you filed fraudulent documents to throw 80 people out of their homes. Have you lost your mind?" "Your Honor, my client, Mr. Thorne." "Mr. Thorne will be subpoenaed," Judge Wallace snapped. "As for you, Miss Sloane, I am referring this matter to the State Bar for disciplinary action and to the District Attorney's Office for investigation into criminal fraud and conspiracy." Sloane looked like she had been struck by lightning. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "the temporary restraining order against Apex Urban is hereby expanded. I am granting a full preliminary injunction against Apex Urban, Apex Ubran, Thorne Industries, and Marcus Thorne himself. All eviction notices are void. All tenants are to be left in peace, and no one is to set foot on that property, transfer its deed, or sneeze in its direction without my express written permission. The Astor Covenant will be heard, and until it is, Mr. Thorne's Olympus Tower is dead. Do I make myself clear?" "Yes, Your Honor," Sloane whispered, her career evaporating before her eyes. "Now get out of my chambers," Judge Wallace said. "All of you, except Mr. Finley and Ms. Hayes." Sloane stumbled out of the room. The judge sat down, her expression softening as she looked at Clara. "Ms. Hayes, you're the waitress, aren't you?" "Yes, Your Honor," Clara said, her knees shaking. "You read the fine print, both times, the 1892 deed and the 2025 typo. You've done what no law firm in this city could or would do. You held Marcus Thorne accountable." "What happens now?" Arthur asked. "Now," the judge said, "we have a real case. Thorne will have to fight the Astor Covenant, and he'll lose. He'll have to redesign his entire tower to include a public park, or he'll have to abandon the project. Either way, he can't just bully his way through. And I suspect the DA will find a lot more than just this one fraudulent filing. Men like Thorne, they're never sloppy just once." The DA's investigation into Apex Ubran was like pulling a single thread that unraveled a tapestry of corruption. The typo wasn't just sloppy, it was a gateway. It turned out Thorne had been using misspelled shell companies for years to dodge taxes, launder money, and defraud investors. The fraudulent conveyance at the Warwick block was just his most arrogant and his last mistake. Marcus Thorne was arrested. He was indicted on 32 counts of fraud, conspiracy, and tax evasion. His empire, built on intimidation and loopholes, crumbled. The Olympus Tower project was cancelled, his assets frozen. Jessica Sloane was disbarred. Her attempt to knowingly defraud the court and bypass an injunction was the end of her career. She ended up testifying against Thorne for a reduced sentence. The Warwick Arms was saved. The eviction notices were history. With Thorne's assets being liquidated, the tenants, led by Clara and Arthur, formed a co-op. They pooled their original buyout offers and, with a massive loan from a city housing fund, eager to correct its own corruption, they bought the building themselves. The Bluebell Diner reopened. Sal offered Clara her job back, but she politely declined. Arthur Finley, his reputation restored and then some, became a minor city legend. His dusty office was suddenly besieged by clients, the underdogs, the impossible cases, the people everyone else had written off. He hired Clara Hayes as his full-time lead paralegal and chief investigator. "You know," he said to her one afternoon as they looked out their new, much cleaner office window, "you're a natural, Clara. You should go to law school." Clara was looking at the files for their new case, a group of nurses fighting a hospital conglomerate. She smiled, tapping a line in the contract with her pen. "I'm thinking about it," she said, "but someone needs to stay here and read the fine print. I found a liquidated damages clause in their pension plan that looks fishy." Arthur just laughed, pouring himself a coffee, not a whiskey. Clara Hayes was still a server, in a way, but she wasn't serving coffee to sharks anymore. She was serving them justice, and it was always served cold. They say one person can't change the world. They say the rich and powerful always win. But this story shows us that's a lie. It shows us that a billion-dollar empire can be toppled by a single line of text, and that the person nobody sees, the waitress, the janitor, the underdog, is often the only one brave enough to read it. The system is only ironclad if we're too scared to look for the cracks. Clara and Arthur proved that integrity and intelligence are more powerful than greed. What did you think of Clara's courage? Have you ever seen an everyday person take on a powerful bully? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you loved this story of karmic justice, please hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and be sure to subscribe for more incredible stories just like this one. Thank you for watching.